Apple reportedly in talks to buy Intel's 5G modem business for $1 billion. Of course, that had to be the top story. That's a big deal. You might just be a person, you like your smartphone, you like what it does for you, but there's a lot, in the back end, handshakes, conversations, in this case, lawsuits, legal battles that lead to these bizarre and expanding and interesting landscapes in which your smartphone is eventually delivered to you via that landscape. This is significant because it's the baseline of it, the origin of this potential purchase. I guess it's not official yet, but this potential purchase is beef. The origin is beef. Beef between Apple and Qualcomm. We're going to have to take a little step back here, but Qualcomm, I mean, you hear about them no matter which smartphone you're talking about for the most part. And they are the engine behind the smartphone universe through these licensing agreements that allow all these various manufacturers to use their components in their smartphones, particularly in 5G category. And of course, Apple presumably moving into 5G fairly soon. And so because they're so dominant and they hold these licensing agreements, and they kind of, according to Apple, almost hold these companies like Apple, the smartphone manufacturers, hostage to use their equipment and nothing else. Apple had an ongoing lawsuit with them, which was recently surprisingly settled. Now, the lawsuit stated that this was Apple's complaint that Qualcomm was using its position in the marketplace to charge exorbitant prices because they had they didn't use the terminology monopolize, but the technology they own is necessary for a competitive smartphone product in 2019. And so Qualcomm takes Apple to court over a bunch of money. Apple says, no, thank you. You should charge us a fair price. We're a big customer. This is unfair, whatever. They settle and they sign a new long-term agreement. All the while, Apple rapidly trying to figure out their own technologies to potentially in the future not be so reliant on a company like Qualcomm, but not getting to that point fast enough, obviously, and therefore signing this contract extension. Well, that's what leads us to this right here. Intel at that point, who thought they had an avenue, they thought they had a path towards success in the 5G modem department for smartphones, for the future of smartphones, where they thought they could possibly have Apple as a customer because of the ongoing beef between Apple and Qualcomm. Intel says, you guys shook hands, you guys made up, the lawsuit is over, we don't see a path for ourselves now because we can't crack into this thing. This is difficult. Qualcomm's doing such a good job. They've got all these customers already. We thought Apple could be our customer that could put us over the top and make the whole thing worthwhile. Well, when they settled and shook hands, Intel was like, you know what? We're out. That's how big of a lead Qualcomm has in this department. They're like, we're out. That's Intel saying, we're out. And at that point, they started to look for a potential buyer. Well, who can buy Intel's modem business? Now, keep in mind, this isn't Intel. You're not buying Intel. But even Intel's modem business is substantial. You're talking about heavy-duty engineers, patents, a huge library of patents, and really the only other company poised to even make a play in this department immediately, because designing and developing these technologies takes time. So they say, hey, we're looking for a buyer. And Apple, who supposedly squashed their beef with Qualcomm, they turn up as the top bidder, the potential top bidder. This makes a lot of sense. The beef is not over, Willie Doo. The beef ain't done cooked. I didn't think I would ever have a moment to say something like that.
You're waiting for that?
Over here. And I'm not even sure, as it came out, I was like, wow, I really get a chance to say that. That feels good. It feels good to be able to,
get out of your system.
Just say something like that. Just get it out there, The beef ain't fully cooked, Willie Doo. That's some hip-hop stuff right there, you understand? Yeah. The beef ain't fully cooked.
For your OG.
Yeah! So anyway, it's always there. It's still simmering under the radar. And increasingly, we've talked so much about the Huawei situation being, Huawei being reliant on all these various technology companies and patents and so on, licensing deals. it's obvious that these tech companies want to own more of their own tech. Apple did this in many ways with their own chips, with their A-series processors and all this. And there's even talks that they're looking to move further away from Intel in the laptop environment, where you might see an ARM-based Apple laptop at some point. So this is increasingly happening, this consolidation in the tech world. And if Apple goes out and buys this thing, starts to work on their own 5G technology, they can be in far more control over the cost of this of these technologies, and not just be on the hook for these licensing deals that other manufacturers have with Qualcomm, and therefore they could potentially increase their profits or develop products that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to develop. It doesn't change the fact that Qualcomm is still, they're the gangster in this. Well, we tested it previously on various devices that would be the same device but have different modems. I don't know if you remember that video we shot upstairs. Right. And Qualcomm was still crushing in this department, and presumably they'll continue to do so. They're not just going to close up shop if Apple goes ahead and buys this aspect of Intel. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. And if, as I just mentioned, they do now have a new deal with Apple also. So they're going to be okay. But in the meantime, it does look like Apple is trying to get more control back internally, to own more of this technology. And Intel, on the other hand, they're going to catch $1 billion, but then they're out of it. And then where do they go? Because it seems like increasingly they're being left out of this futuristic progression towards strictly mobile processing. If all of a sudden they don't have a play because they give up their 5G modem department, which is like one of the few, futuristic, let's say, components of their company. I'm not saying we're anywhere near like these things, we still got it. I'm not saying that yet. But I'm just saying you're giving up a major play. You're trading tomorrow for today. You see that, Willie do? That's like sports. You get the prospect. You trade the tried and tested. You trade the veteran for the prospect. You get a little bit less back. It's a risk-reward situation here.
How do you feel about $1 billion? Like buying it for $1 billion. Do you think it's
is that a lot or a little?
Yeah.
Oh, for Apple, it's $100 bill for Apple. It ain't a thing. It ain't nothing. But it's still $1 billion, Will.
Yeah.
You understand? There's only so many things that are bought and sold for $1 billion. It's still big. It's only the chip business. And it also indicates just how hard this marketplace is to compete, how fast it moves, type of stuff Qualcomm's doing. You got to appreciate. If Intel's like, man, we can't, we're out. Intel, it's like, we're out.
Right. That's
big time. That's a big deal. And so they may be looking for a rescue. You got to remember, Will, they started looking for a buyer. It ain't like this came out of nowhere. If you read through the articles, they were ready to throw in the towel on this particular business. That's what Qualcomm's been up to. So anyhow, Apple taking back more control. Qualcomm probably wouldn't like this all that much, but I'm not sure they care that much at this particular point. They got their new deal for the time being, but nonetheless, an indication that making 5G modems is hard. We already knew it, but maybe even harder than we originally thought, because Intel was prepared to back out of it and looking for a buyer. Now, speaking of difficult businesses, the smartphone business, a difficult business at the moment, more difficult than it has been previously. And an indicator here for me is some recent data regarding the iPhone XR, representing nearly half of recent U.S. iPhone purchases ahead of the iPhone 11 launch. We have some pretty cool data from a company called CIRP. They released a new report with estimates for how well each iPhone model sold during Apple's Q3. In addition to the iPhone XR being the most popular phone, they also, in their survey, looked at how frequently or commonly Apple users were engaging with Apple's various services. The iPhone XR represented 48% of Apple's smartphone sales in that particular quarter, which is massive, considering it's a non-flagship, right? It's a non-flagship device. You can see it represented in this graph that Will's showing off. You have like the XS Max, for example. I mean, it sold almost 10x. 10x the XS Max. How about that? And the XS, about the same as the XS Max. You combine the two, you're still barely at a quarter of what they sold in iPhone XR department. Of course, this graph also includes older generation iPhone models. People, believe it or not, are still buying iPhone 8s and 8 Plus. And somehow they're buying as many 8s. They're buying more 8s than they are 10s, 10Ss. Like, that's kind of crazy to begin with as well. You know what this tells me, Will? For all the features and amazing things happening in smartphone, OLED displays, performance improvements, camera improvements, the extra camera modules. If the price ain't right, Will, it's price right now that to me seems to be the driving force for people. Was the 10R too good for the price, or was it just that people viewed the 10R too much like the 10S and they just couldn't see the reason for the extra? I can see the difference between an OLED display and a traditional LCD display, but maybe the average customer can't, it turns out. I mean, look at this. Did they look at both in the store? Or did they just say, I need a new iPhone, and they went on the website and they just like, oh, that one looks the same? Fine. Like, does this say more about an iPhone user? And I don't think an iPhone user is necessarily spec chasing. And I think that's kind of what Apple's worried about as far as getting into the competitive mid-range or even lower end of the market. iPhone users, I believe they understand the idea of a newer model, the difference between an 8 and a 10. But beyond that, are they really sensing or feeling the differentiation between that premium one or the R model? Or are they just saying, I need a new iPhone, and they're just seeing the cheaper price? That's fine. That's a new one too. I'll take that one.
There wasn't a big jump between the 10 and the 10S, right?
You mean in terms of features?
Yeah.
Well, you had a camera.
A little bit of a spec bump.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
had a spec bump.
But they looked pretty much the same.
They look the same, absolutely. To a customer, yeah, they look the same. They look the same, absolutely. It's faster, spec bump. You're right. This 10R situation, though, I really think is really interesting data because you believed, at least the word on the street was that the iPhone users are strictly a premium user. They got all the money in the world. $1,000 smartphone, Apple can do it. You see a stat like this and you start to realize maybe they're not. Yeah, there's a lot of brand recognition, brand value. But people it appears based on this data that they got the same value out of having that logo on a lesser spec. That was okay, that still signaled premium enough to them. And this is why I think it's dangerous for Apple. If they go down that food chain to try to attract, say, an Android buyer who's in a much more competitive marketplace with way more things to choose from, do they take their current core customer and just turn them all into mid-range buyers and leave all that profit margin on the table by offering up something more competitive? I think the 10R seems to indicate that. I do think they have to continue to move in that direction. But they got to be careful about doing it from a business perspective to protect those profits associated with the flagship stuff, which is what they used to sell at the same clip as this R model. See, if you go back prior to that period, you can see the 8 Plus was the #1 selling device June of 2018 compared to June of 2019. Interestingly enough, it had sold at the time the 10, but at that moment, you only had those two really to choose from. And the 10 at that time occupied a bigger range than, say, the 10S now in the same time period a year later. So things have happened in the marketplace. There's so many variables and factors that come into play when you think about customer decisions. There's the macroeconomic stuff. Do people have as much disposable income? Are they starting to pinch back? Then we get into the feature talk. Like I said, can you tell the difference between these specs, and is it worthwhile ultimately at the end, given all those factors combined together? Turns out the 10R hit the nail on the head for them, but what did they leave on the table? If they don't launch the 10R, are all those buyers prepared to just spend a little extra on the other one if they didn't have the 10R option? Maybe a few less. Who knows? Now, also, keep in mind, they had a real marketing push around that 10R. You go on the webpage, you'd be like, you could have a 10R for like $200 if you trade in your old phone. Like, they were really trying to move 10Rs. Leftover LCD panels, who knows?
Yeah, liquid retina. It's
liquid
like
retina.
The regular saying of like LCD.
No. Liquid.
Yeah.
Liquid retina.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that sound high tech? Liquid.
Yeah, I'm sold.
You understand?
Buy one right now.
Yeah.
So do you think the 10R, Apple's going to experiment on other versions of the 10R in the future?
Yeah. They're going to
Like
have
maybe a
another
smaller
R version
display
this
or
time
something?
around, and they're going to sell it again, and they're going to continue to chip away at the premium stuff. because people don't have two iPhones. They have one iPhone. And Apple only launched a premium one previously. Of course, the iPhone 6, 7, 8, there was no budget model. Even 10, when the 10 came out, just get the 10 or nothing at all. So anyway, there's another cool part of this particular survey, which looks at Apple services. They determined that 35% of iPhone users were signed up for Apple Music. That's kind of a big number, I guess. 48% were on a paid iCloud plan, which that makes the most sense to me because they really push it from the jump. Try to get your stuff in the cloud and say, hey, you're going to store your photos. It's just all so integrated and easy. Apple Care, not very popular, around 3.6% of users. I guess the whole warranty thing, not what it used to be. People just trust these devices are gonna work. Apple News, I don't think that met people's expectations. 15% of Apple users are using Apple News and Apple TV, and Apple Podcasts were around 30%. That makes sense to me too. They were the OGs in the space, but Apple Podcasts is not paid. So of these services, the only paid one being iCloud. Even the Apple News one, I'm not really sure. Are they using the paid version? No, they're probably using the free version. So anyhow, you get an iPhone, you use iPhone services, Apple services. Not such a surprise there, but iPhone XR, to me, key indicator, people are more cost sensitive now than they used to be, and they're selecting for their cost sensitivity, not necessarily all the features. It's a value. It's a package deal they're looking at. We got to do our quick Huawei update, obviously, very important. We got some news in relationship to North Korea. Well, I don't think we ever talked about North Korea on here before, but it was only a matter of time, in fact. Oh, we did. We talked about the handshake. We talked about the Trump detour to North Korea we might have talked about. So apparently we got some new emerging details about Huawei's interaction, relationship with North Korea, supposedly responsible for implementing certain technologies in North Korea, responsible for installing networks in North Korea, communications in North Korea. It's a report via the Washington Post that Huawei has worked on multiple projects in North Korea over the last 8 years, and there's some internal documents floating around, apparently posted by a former Huawei employee, that show that Huawei was invested in building and maintaining wireless network equipment in North Korea, and that they even had like code names to try to avoid scrutiny for having these relationships and these ongoing within these documents. Apparently, North Korea was referred to as A9. A9, Will. Code name, A9. Hey, Will, you doing any work in A9 later this week?
All the time.
Yeah. See, that's how if I look at Will's emails, I go in, I take a glance at the emails over there. So A9's popping up all over the place. Yeah. I'm like, hey, Will, how's that edit going? He's like, it's going well. I look over at the screen, it's a giant A9, 140 font size, just A9.
It's like, yes, I'll be there.
Yeah. Starts talking like a robot. I'm like, wait a second.
Send over the helicopter.
I'm like, what's wrong with Will right now? To see giant A9s in his, what are we talking about?
I got a tattoo. A9.
Anyway, apparently Huawei used a similar code in those same internal documents whenever they referred to Iran or Syria. Now, Iran is interesting because that's the country Huawei was dealing with, presumably, allegedly, that brought the beef to Canada when, what was her name, got arrested. The daughter of, was he the daughter of the CEO? She was the daughter of the CEO? What was her name? Meng Wanzhou, my daughter. Yeah, Huawei CEO's daughter. I think she's still detained to a certain extent. She's on house arrest in Vancouver right now because of that specific departure from the agreed upon trade sanction against Iran. That's apparently what led to that. So this is another example of this where you can't really figure out how bad it is. You're like, I don't know. You would have to then project what you think these states would be doing with this technology. So, for example, it's like if Google was to say, hey, we really feel it's important for the North Korean people to have access to the internet. So we're going to float a hot air balloon above North Korea so people could connect to free Wi-Fi and see what the world's about. Okay, that would be one news story. It'd be a feel good. Like, they're trying to rescue North Korea. If Huawei goes in and they're like, yeah, we're going to put a bunch of towers in there so these people have cell phones. Everyone's like, are you?
Sneaky.
Yeah, everyone's like, it's different, right? Everyone's like, is that what you're doing? Or espionage, heavy hitters? Are you shaking hands on a different level? Is it the briefcase in the back of the Mercedes Benz? The one they're running alongside. You know the one.
Well, why they have to call?
Well, you know the one. Bring it up with the bodyguards running beside the Mercedes Benz. You know the one. It's very important. I apologize for the interruption there. It's a very important part of the equation here. There it is, Will. You got it. 12 bodyguards in the middle there. You see? This is how you travel. You need to travel like this, Willie do.
Oh.
You understand? You got to travel like he travels. It's very important for your own protection. You got a big profile right now. We got volume. What do we got going on?
We got sacks.
Can you turn down the volume? I don't have the remote.
All right, hold on.
No, can't you just hit your own volume? Won't that work?
No,
it's so complicated anyway. This is my fault. This is my detour right now. I promise it's worth it. At least if you're watching the video, it's so worth it. Here is the stretch Mercedes limo. There's a dozen dudes. I mean, no, the dude in the front right, he's jacked too. Look at the chest on that man. But he can still move.
All wearing suits.
Yeah, exactly.
Super hot.
Suited up. They don't feel the heat, these guys.
Yeah.
They're trained not to feel the heat. They all got fresh haircuts. You understand? So they're tip-top. And they stand around. They guard it. It's unbelievable. What you going to do? And then you emerge like that, Willie, dude. That's you. You understand? You go to your destination. You emerge like that.
I was actually in the vehicle.
Yeah, you stayed in.
A9 talk.
Yeah, you were having an A9 talk. Well said, Willie do. So anyway, point being is this videos like this, they scare people. People go, man, that guy, I don't know. He's powerful. He's got people. Look, he's got the stretch limo. What are we going to do? Got the 12 security guys. So then you hear a story like this and you're like, well, wait a second. Huawei's working with these guys. What does that mean? Similar to the Iran story. So it gets that twist on it. You see the code names as well, and you realize they know they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing. If you got a code name in the paperwork, now I haven't seen the paperwork, but if you got a code name in the paperwork, it kind of indicates, it's a bit murky. The waters are murky at least.
Yep.
So anyhow, these documents emerge, and the problem with that is it applies more pressure now to the regulators in the U.S. They take a look at these documents, and they say, see, I told you so. Trump, you better amp up this ban. Because, look what's going on. You have your own trade rules and embargoes and various things with countries like North Korea, Syria, and Iran. And, of course, countries, nations, they come together. They determine and decide on these sanctions in order to act as a punitive measure to try to get these types of states to comply with international standards. That's how these sanctions work. And if there are ways around the sanctions, guess what? It ain't a sanction, Will. You see how that goes? That ain't a sanction at all. You still get what you want. Mm-hmm. That's like a parent says, go to your room. And the kid's like, my room? I got video games. I got Cheetos. That's a punishment? See you later, Mom. Go to my room. Ha! So all of a sudden, Trump goes, sanction. North Korea doesn't get our technologies. And Huawei's like, what do you mean they don't? 5G. North Korea got 5G. We don't have 5G yet. You see that? I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how it goes. Anyhow, it's causing it's a whole nother beef storm. And we got to see how it all maps out. But look, I'm not surprised. I got to be honest. I'm not surprised. For me, as much as everyone wants to ratchet up the espionage dial, for me, this is like kind of almost like an ethic of the company. Like, they want to do business, maximum business everywhere. I've been to China. Business is popping up out of every... Will, do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Business is just emerging out of every...
Yeah.
You're just walking down the street. Business. It's entrepreneurial. So I get the sense that companies, especially at the scale of Huawei, they don't want to be told by any government. Here's how you can and can't do business. They don't work like that, man. They're just bursting at the seams to like, you need something, we got it. What, you need me to write A9 to make a deal? Psh, A9 all day. So I don't know. You could read into it. You could go the espionage route. It's up to you. There's a lot of information available. For me, what we have right now is that they're interacting, and they're interacting in some sort of a business relationship. And now there's gonna have to be a whole new evaluation that takes place based on that. We have some more detailed specs on Galaxy Note and Note 10 Plus. We talked a little bit about the specs. Of course, we saw the renders. Of course, we saw the hole punch. Center of the display different from the S series stuff. Looks cool. Going to be a powerhouse. We now have like dedicated specs, including some interesting ones in relationship to the front camera. Apparently, a reliable source, we'll see if that's the case, states that front-facing camera is going to be the first front-facing camera to have a night mode, Will. So your selfies get the night mode treatment. So that's kind of, I don't know if that's exciting to you or not. I guess it could be. Night mode is amazing, obviously, on the rear cameras. People take a lot of photos themselves, their loved ones. Get a little night mode on the front one. Of course, there's other stuff. Apparently, the S Pen is going to pick up a couple of new tricks. Rounding out the specs for the two different models, you're going to have the Note 10 regular at 6.8 inches AMOLED. And then the Note 10 Plus at 6.3 inches. Is that right? Or should those be swapped?
That should be swapped.
That should be swapped, obviously. Snapdragon 855, obviously. 8 gigs of RAM or 12 gigs of RAM. 256 storage. Battery life will be obviously different for the 10 and 10 Plus. The 10 is going to be between 3,400 and 3,500 milliamp hours. Not that impressive. And then the Plus will be 4,300 to 4,500. Bit more impressive. The little guy at 5.9 ounces. The big guy at 6.98 ounces. Now, again, this is still, it's still a leak. It's a rumor at this point, but it's supposedly a reliable one. The S Pen is going to grip a couple of other features here. The ability to switch between photos without touching the screen in an air command style gesture. And also, how about this one for you, Will? How about this little quirky little one? It's going to have the ability to mimic the sound of a highlighter pen when you're taking notes.
Oh, that's a seller right there.
You like that, don't you? That's a ASMR moment. It's like, Kirk knows about it. That's all he watches all day. I come in here. It's unbelievable, this guy. Highlighters all over his desk. Highlighters all over his face. All right, Kirk, they're not edible. Okay? I know the green color's tantalizing. Looks like a green apple or maybe a lime. How about that? You never know. You get a green candy. You never know. Is it green apple or is it lime? You'll never know.
Remember those markers that used to smell?
Yeah. Yeah, all the kids in school. That's why we're all messed up these days. We were all smelling the magic markers. They even call them magic markers. I mean, it's all scary when you think about it. I guess the other colors would be yellow. You get a rare banana, usually a lemon. You see this, Will? Mm-hmm. You got to brush up on that stuff. Anyhow, Note 10, Note 10 Plus, very exciting. You know what's crazy? I just recently shot a video upstairs. Well, you were there, so it's not crazy to you. Yeah. On the ROG Phone 2. The thing has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. At least that's what you tell me. And now I can't even look at other phones. Like this says 4,500 milliamp hour battery. And I'm like, because it just changes things now. Even 5,000 doesn't sound crazy when you look at that 6,000. If what Will's telling me is true, and you never know what a guy like Willie do. He's got the bodyguards to back him up. He can say whatever he wants. But anyhow, I have to judge things now through the lens of this 6,000 milliamp hour phone with a decent form factor, good screen size. OLED display, 120 hertz. I gotta adjust. I'm making adjustments mentally at the moment. You remember the bone conduction headphones? So recently, I did this video on the Bose frames, which weren't bone conduction, but they got me thinking about bone conduction headphones, which I did a video on a while ago from a company called Aftershocks. Those, for me, are a better alternative to headphones than the Bose sunglasses are, because they provided some low end at least. The Bose sunglasses, on the other hand, were just tiny little speakers over your ears. These ones, they rumble a little bit. They actually physically vibrate. Well, at the time, I was like, these could be a really cool option for people who need to maintain their hearing but also want to listen to something and want a little thump, still want to get pumped up. You never know. Athletes, joggers, bike. They're not called bikers. They're called cyclists. Lance Armstrong types before the scandal.
Yeah.
With the tight clothes. You know what I'm talking about.
A lot of spandex.
Aerodynamic.
Yeah.
You can't even see them. Just floating. They're floating through the air. The bike is like feather light. This the guy I'm talking about. Yeah. Somebody over here. This the guy I'm talking about right there. You can't even see him. That's how fast he's moving through the air. Just. So anyhow, I thought they were cool. Well, it turns out they're not giving up. They're not done. I was criticizing the Bose sunglass ones, or I wasn't criticizing. I was just saying, look, they're not the same thing. They serve a different purpose. But it got me thinking about the Aftershocks. Well, here, lo and behold, they sent me an email. We want to send you the new set. And now I'm checking it out over here. Engadget's writing an article. They're called the Aeropex. And they improved on the previous design in a number of categories. And now I'm actually pumped to check them out and see what they're about. They've got magnetic charging contraption, which is a must. They have a degree of what do you call it? Water resistance, a degree of
Sweat resistance.
just durability in general.
Yeah.
Like you can see, they have like a rubberized design. They're a little more expensive, $160 supposedly will be the retail there. But according to this Engadget reviewer, they have a more refined flavor now. So they don't thump quite like the old ones, but they sound more controlled. Whereas those other ones could really just rattle your brain a little bit. They could kind of what are they called? Skull Candy? Was that a headphone brand where they rumbled on your ears? They kind of rumbled maybe a little too much where you lost the music a little bit. Apparently, they've really dialed it in with this new pair, which has now effectively piqued my interest in trying these out, because I do like the idea in general of keeping your hearing about you. Especially, I like to do a little work around the house, Will. Do you know that? I like to get outdoors. I tidy things up.
Yeah.
I get out, in the grass. I love grass. Not that grass. I love actual grass.
Oh, okay.
Like freshly cut grass. You ever smell freshly cut grass? You understand? You get outdoors. You go in the yard.
Nature.
Yeah. You got to get outside, man. I'm serious, though. I'm being really serious. So I like to get outside and do things around the house. But, someone's yelling for me. The neighbor's honking the horn. There's one dog on the street. It's always barking. I need to be aware of certain things when I'm out there. I could have the podcast going, not even think about it. And we've looked at different technologies that could achieve this. There was the Bose thing you wear around the neck, which sounded great, but it's kind of big.
Yeah.
Kind of notice that you're wearing it. There's the sunglasses, which kind of lack the low end because it's just a small speaker unit. This might be the one, if this is any good, for those types of excursions. Similar if you ride a bike. Now, I didn't ride a bike to work in a long time. I didn't put the outfit on in a long time. But I still got some time before the weather's still nice. So you don't know. Tomorrow you might see me on a bike.
Okay.
And if you do, I would like something like this because I don't want to be on a bike closed off. You see? And some of those headphones with the microphone throughput, you forget to turn it on or you lapse. This ensures that your ears are available. It's a cool technology. It is expensive for the new version, $159. But I believe they're sending it to me as well. So this can act as a preview because I'm going to try it out for myself. I believe it's on the way. I don't know if I forward you the thing, but I'm interested. 26 grams. Maybe you don't even notice it. Maybe just have it on. Could be cool. I could wait. You could hide this thing. I could hide this thing under the hockey helmet, Kirk. You don't believe me? Men's league under the hockey helmet. I got pump up tunes. I don't have any. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Facebook warns flaw in Messenger Kids app lets children chat with strangers. What are you doing there on Facebook, kids? Oh, just chatting to a bunch of old men. Oh, God. Apparently, this particular thing was already drawing the attention of regulators to begin with when it came out, and then the worst fears were realized. Kids have just been chatting to random people because the thing is busted, and it was supposed to be set up only for their friends, but if it was a friend of a friend, it acted as a hack.
Yeah.
So now friend of a friend that's everyone now.
Yeah.
You see how that goes, Will? Yeah, so, privacy. No, Mom, I'm just on Facebook. I promise. It's just my own friends. And this other guy, he's a friend now too. Oh, cool, kids. That's awesome. Now, Facebook, they say, oh, it's only a couple people that we patched it. It's just a couple people. But can I just say, does anyone have any faith in Facebook, like to do any of this? Do you, if your kid is like, I'm on this new chat, this kids chat on Facebook, are you confident? What are you doing as a parent? What are you doing? I'm just on this new friendly chat thing on Facebook. You know, it's just my friends. No, I don't think so. Well, they sent out a message. At least they fessed up to it. Said they fixed an error. Sent out a notice to thousands of users, parents, informing them of this design flaw. So they're not saying it was a bug. They're saying it was a design flaw that allowed this to take place, which is kind of worse than a bug, to be honest, because it just means you overlooked it or didn't care about it. Messenger Kids, it launched in 2017. It enables children between 6 and 12 years old to chat with family members. Sure. And a list of friends pre-approved by their parents. But a technical error meant it was possible for them to talk to just about anyone, obviously. Now, they've had concerns, as I mentioned. Regulators been looking at them. The FTC been looking at this particular app since 2018, saying it does not meet the criteria for what a kids app is supposed to do from a privacy perspective. And you know how this goes, Will. Like your kids who you don't know what they're putting out there, and then you don't know what they're putting out there is getting put out there by other people. It's a huge concern when you have kids but 6 years old transmitting information. It's one thing to put them on what is it, Skype or what is the Apple? Why can't I never remember this? No, the FaceTime. FaceTime. They got all their own names for like video conference. FaceTime. I've used FaceTime. Rarely, but I've used it. If they go on FaceTime, the parent knows the contact list. The parent knows, like, they're not going to be targeted. How is someone going to get a hold of them that they don't know? Like, how's that all going to happen? And usually, you know, maybe even be the parent's device. They hand it over temporarily, get it back. You open this thing up, you install a Facebook Kids Messenger on your child's iPad. Are you able to monitor it 24/7? You hear something like this, it's obvious that there's a problem there, and I will be skeptical. This would be my message. I would be skeptical of all these apps to begin with. Yeah. Even the apps that are supposedly vetted, like YouTube Kids, gets a bit wacky. You know, this is not exclusive to Facebook. You almost feel like with some of these apps, there's like could be less attention to detail at first because they're like, well, what are the kids gonna say? You know, are they gonna know that it's all messy in there, that it's all screwed up? And I know there's been improvements on the YouTube Kids app, but I'm still not even happy with the YouTube Kids app. I'll be honest with you right now. If I launch that thing, if I see my kids launch it, they don't even launch it. But if I see them launch it and I'm like, this is what's being suggested.
They see Pulp Fiction.
Like, there's no sign in. Nobody signed in. No, I'm not saying it's Pulp Fiction, but it's like just the type of content that surfaces is, whoa.
Really?
It's just nothing content. It's just like, just brain dead. You remember like Nickelodeon minus 1,000. Like if you just kept diving down that dark vortex, black hole, where do you end up? Like slime, and it's just nothing, brain dead content. So I don't know what they can do to work on that, but I know in my particular situation, if I see the kids boot into that, I'm like, garbage, garbage, garbage. I'm like, what are you doing with your life? Then you know what I'm like? Get outside. Get into nature. Well, I don't have to tell them. They know what's up. They're cool. They know what's up. But anyhow, New York pressuring Tesla to open up the supercharger network. So this is an interesting development, something I had been thinking about. Just the proprietary nature of the Tesla supercharging network. Like, are regulators going to really let them own all these proprietary charging stations? Well, they're going to let them own them, but they still have to pull energy from the grid. And energy in the grid, in many ways, is connected to the entire citizenry. Everybody in some way or another is interacting with that grid, like say in their house or wherever it is that you buy electricity. And so in most places, there's different rates for electricity depending on how much you're using, peak hours. There's like all kinds of rules around it to try to manage energy as a resource, which belongs essentially to everyone in some way or another, the grid. And so these superchargers suck a ton of juice, Willie do. I promise you, they stick a straw right into the grid for real. Apparently, what is it I read here? Yeah. Superchargers have a high peak throughput. 250 kilowatt V3 charger with 8 bays can draw up to 2 MW of power. What is that? Milliwatt? I don't know what that is.
Megawatt?
Megawatt! I never thought there'd be a time where I would get to say megawatt on the channel, but I'm so happy about it. Even if that's not what. Anyway, here's the important part. It's 100 times more than the peak power draw of a home. It's 100 homes. You put in one Tesla supercharger, and its peak throughput is 100 homes. It's like a community, like you just built a community from a demand perspective. So Tesla argued it should not be excluded from. There's this thing called what is it called? It's called the non-per. Oh no, not that. It's called where is it? Basically, the way it breaks down, because of the peaky power usage, demand charges are additional significant charges access to businesses that have exceptionally peaky power usage. So companies that demand power to this degree away from the greater good of the community for their own purposes or for their own benefit or for their own profits, those companies pay an extra amount for that on-demand peaky power consumption, which kind of happens to you in your own home to a certain degree if you choose to do laundry during peak hours.
Right.
It's different. You pay a different rate than if it's off peak because of how these grids operate. Well, anyhow, Tesla had this exemption. I guess is it an exemption, or they just say that that shouldn't apply to them because this is for the greater good of the community or whatever, and they sell the majority of electric vehicles, and it might not be feasible if they're paying this high rate. It might not be a feasible thing to deliver if all of a sudden the cost of this electricity goes through the roof. So anyhow, it turns out this has the potential to turn political. The argument makes more sense if Tesla doesn't have a proprietary connector. If anyone with any brand of car that has an electric motor and battery can pull up there and charge, then all of a sudden that argument makes more sense as to why it should be exempted. But if Tesla solely benefits because their customers want to buy Teslas because they're able to recharge them for free or for this very cheap fee, then it's helping their business grow exclusively and not necessarily the entire community. And so that's the argument there. Now, apparently a way around this is Tesla could also install alongside their proprietary chargers the generic universal style chargers like ChargePoint or something like that. And then their argument changes. But for the time being, it's going to become increasingly political, and the cost could go up for this type. Whether the cost is assumed by Tesla or if they pass it back on to the owner is unknown at this moment. But it turns out that proprietary charge station may be under attack. It may have to open up a little bit. It's sucking a lot of juice. It's a straw. They're putting a straw in the grid. Now, I'm sure Elon Musk disagrees with all this. He's probably sitting there going, my straw is nothing. That energy wouldn't be utilized. People are using gasoline. They're using dinosaur juice. I'm trying to give them the other juice. You know, they probably got a lot of, it's obviously an argument going on. Starts in New York. Funny enough, those superchargers, I believe, are made in Buffalo. So in the state where they're providing and employing people, it's kind of interesting how that goes. Anyway, nonetheless, new pressure. Have you ever heard of DoorDash, Willie Do?
Something about food?
Yeah, I guess it's like Uber Eats. You know, they bring you a meal. They deliver a subpar meal to you that used to be good. At the time it was picked up, it was good. And now
there's spit all over it.
It just isn't what it used to be. That should be the motto of all these companies. They deliver you a meal that used to be good. It was good at one point in time. I don't know. Look, they get it to you. It's still food. Relax. But I'm just saying, it used to be better. You can't argue that.
Still food.
No, it used to be better. You can't argue that. Like, as soon as it came off the grill in the restaurant, it was at peak. It was peak performance. You're getting a sub-peak. We just talked about peak with the power consumption. You're getting off-peak hour. You're getting off-peak food. Pre-peak. It peaked before it got to you. Anyway, I don't like these services. I just go to a restaurant. All right, I live my life. I go out in nature. I go to the restaurant. You understand? I don't need another reason to sit on a couch. I got lots of reasons to sit on a couch. Smartphones, laptops. I get out there. Okay, but whatever. You might be busy. You work a hard job. You're in the sun. I talked about this.
Yeah,
and you just need a DoorDash here and there. So I understand. But anyway, they're in the news right now because apparently you tip the DoorDash guy. He doesn't get the tip. That's actually his wage, apparently. And people were outraged about this a while ago, but it's resurfacing now because apparently nothing ever happened. And it's the same story over again. And it's kind of, as much as I don't use these services, I find it be deceptive that you tell the person that they're tipping the guy and they're not tipping the guy. And maybe if they were tipping the guy, the service would be substantially different because the guy would be like more invested in it than knowing that your tip is just going to pay his regular wage anyways. I don't like it. Like, I understand I've traveled to certain places in the world where tipping is less of a thing that goes on, but it's so well understood here in North America that it does matter. It does affect outcomes. If you tip well, your experience is different. Now, I'm not saying it should be that way. I'm not saying I agree with it, whatever. It could be different where you are, but it does work in places where it is understood in my personal experience. Vegas being a perfect example where tipping, if you go to a resort in the Caribbean somewhere, like without tipping, you're dead. You're done. Yeah. You're just not even existing. So anyhow, in this case, whether you agree with tipping or not, they're telling you, in fact, their language says specifically 100%. They claim Dashers keep 100% of customer tips. Now, the way they're able to state that on the app when you make the order is because they have a really low per delivery guaranteed minimum, as low as $1. It could be $1 and then an additional $3. Like, let me just give you this demo. This is a demo that Gizmodo drummed up. Let's say a delivery promises a minimum of $8 and a customer tips $4 on the order. DoorDash applies the $4 tip toward the base pay. We'll pay $1 and then cough up an additional $3 to make the difference. So the tip goes to the wage first as part of the minimum order fee represented that the DoorDasher gets when the order comes in. So the person thinks they gave a $4 tip when in reality, in this case, what is the tip worth? On $8, $4 went towards the $8. There's no tip. Is there a tip?
No, there's no tip.
There's no tip. You tipped nothing in that circumstance. Now,
they're paying for their wage.
If you tip $10, there's a $2 tip against the minimum.
Yeah.
But you would need to give a massive tip to actually tip them. Bigger than your order, potentially. It's so bizarre. I don't really know. But I guess people do give massive tips because your order is not going to be $8. Your order on DoorDash would be like $20, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, maybe it maps out a little differently depending on the size of the order. This is particularly terrible, obviously, on a low order where the tip may be small to begin with. You got to wonder how much these people are going to care. But the real issue is not about the tipping. It's not about the order minimum. It's not about the agreement, actually, that the DoorDash employee makes with the company. It's about the deceptive nature in which the company, DoorDash, communicates with the client, which is you, the buyer, in making it seem like you're tipping 100% of the tips and stay with the person delivering, when in reality, it's just some fancy legal language to allow that to take place. So that's deceptive. I don't think it's cool. I get it. The people who get into this job probably understand it very quickly that, hey, this is how it works. You don't have to do it. They have the choice. They don't have to do this job. But on the customer side, to me, it's no argument. If this is the model and this is how it works, a customer should know how that breakdown's going so that they're not like there was a similar situation with Uber. Like, you never knew what was going on. In the early days, they're like, no tip necessary. right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Early days of Uber, they're like, it's worked in. Then the tip thing showed up, and you're like, wait a sec. Is there tips now? And then drivers would tell you, hey, tips are welcome. And you'd be like, but the message and even the marketing earlier, I feel like I remember was like, no. The point is for this to be seamless. No tip. You just tap the thing. It's all in one fee. So they've been playing around with this confusing language for a while, but you can understand why it's beneficial to them. If they can get the tips to cover the wages, the margins go way up.
Exactly.
So you understand where it goes. But I will say, in defense of DoorDash, not that I'm trying to defend, I still feel it's deceptive. You have these similar models exist in actual physical restaurants where there will be waiters and waitresses will earn lower than minimum wage because of the presumption of the tip coming through. And they allow them to do that because of how substantial tips can be. So for people in countries where tips don't take place, tips can be massive. They can completely overwhelm. You can make way more money than a typical server. If you do a good job and you earn a lot of tips, it can overwhelm your entire salary. And so those types of situations exist. So the tip culture, in a way, can be beneficial as well if it's worked out and it's well understood where that money's all going. And me as a customer, I want to know where it's going, ideally.
There's a solution here, though. It's they say to just tip them in cash.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
there you go.
simple.
But who has cash?
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have. You're using DoorDash on the app. Do you have cash lying around? Maybe. That's right. Willie Do gave a good example there, though. You could just tip the DoorDashers. You could tip the dashers and cashers. Anyway, Willie Do, I'm in a rush today. Actually, I should probably mention I'm gonna be. Oh, you're gonna watch this tomorrow, but you can go back and watch because I'm gonna be helping out for the Blue Jays broadcast, Blue Jays versus Indians today. That's the Cleveland Indians. I'm talking about the MLB baseball game. I'm going to be helping out with the broadcast, or at least on the broadcast. I don't know to what extent at the moment, but it's part of this promo where YouTube is streaming for free baseball games, which is kind of cool. Anyone can watch. You just click on it. Like, there's no weird membership, no weird stuff at all. You just go watch. It's free. It's open. Anyway, I'm going to be on that broadcast. You're watching this after it happened, though, because I'll be going there right now tonight. So if you want to go watch the replay, you can. But anyway, that's the reason I'm taking off early. I got to be there for batting practice. How cool is that? Anyhow, Willie Do, why don't you hit us with one question? I'm sure you got one.
All right. Let's do one. Here.
And then I'll boogie. Then I'll head down there. I'll hit some dingers. You understand?
Okay. So this one's from Aaron. Hey, guys. Aloha from the 50th state. Now, I know you all are the lower 48th neighbors to the north. Just wondering if you could shed some light on that imperial to metric conversion of a boatload. What do you think? Shed some light.
Did we determine what the actual boatload quantity was?
For some reason, I always thought it was like a trillion.
Oh,
1 trillion.
wow. You
If
thought
I
a
were to
boatload
put
was
a
a
hard
trillion.
number, yeah.
Now, metric and imperial, that's measurements. That's like centimeters versus inches.
Inches, feet.
Feet. Well, in weight, it's kilos versus pounds.
Yeah.
So he's going that direction. I think a boatload, a literal boat loaded, a loaded boat. So now you're talking about one of those transport boats. The
Like a
ones come
freight?
from freight boat, come from China to the shipyard.
Yeah.
And unload all the goods on the containers, which then go into the trains or onto the trucks. So we could find out how many kilos are on a transport boatload and therefore convert that kilo number into pounds. Don't you? Oh, there's a definition of boatload. Click on that.
What, this one right here?
No, the top one.
It's not this one?
A load that fills a boat. No, I like that. I'm happy with that. A boatload is a load that fills a boat. Oh, or an indefinitely large number or amount. Indefinitely. That's the way I use it.
There you go.
So I'm using it the right way, the actual defined, clearly defined way. So therefore, actually, there's no answer to his question because I use it the second way, not the load that fills the boat, although that's the direction I was going. Nonetheless, we should still answer the question in the first definition.
Modern container ship can carry over 21,000
TEU. What is that? Some sort of volume thing? No.
101,000
No. Forget about TEUs. We need kilograms. Oh my God. See, it's some sort of volume thing, TEU. 20 feet long, 8 feet. 20-foot equivalent unit. It's, yeah, because all those units are carrying different amounts of weight. We need to know how much that thing can hold before it sinks. I don't care about volume.
You don't care about volume.
No, volume wouldn't matter to us because
So it's a weight?
he wants a metric conversion. We're not getting into volume cubed and 400,000 tons. Perfect. Okay, hit us with that then. 400,000. Okay, 400,000 tons. Tonnage, fine. 400,000 tons conversion. There you go. Okay, so 400,000 tons is what is that number? How many zeros are there? 36 million?
No, 362
362 million kilograms is a boatload, according to Kirk, maximum. I don't know if he's right or not, but none of it matters because there are two definitions to boatload, it turns out. Now, honestly, I probably use it even looser than the actual definition, but the definition says indefinite. So that means I can do what I want. That's my favorite type of word, Willie do. You know, this show right here is going to keep going indefinitely.